with chapter 10 out of the way, the question now becomes, what will happen in chapter 11 for our hero? Will the survivors be all right? Will we bring Mr. P to justice? There's just so many questions and not enough answers. And Piggy just has a way of doing this, right? Where they just raise all these different story ideas and all these different questions. And I would love to have some answers too, man. Just Minitoon, help a guy out. But before I get too far ahead of myself, I do want to really quickly take a look at this tweet right here. And I want to ask you guys, so this is just like last time in chapter 10. For chapter 11, Minitoon has tweeted this as a teaser about where we're going next. Now, a fire and a bomb emoji, it's not much to go on. I personally am jumping on the bandwagon. A lot of people have speculated this, but a lot of people are like, oh, it's gonna be military base kind of thing, like a military theme thing. I think that's correct. I personally think it's gonna be like an air base. And I think the reason why that would make sense is because at the very end of chapter 10, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched chapter 10 yet, go ahead and watch that first and come back. But chapter 11, I think, could be an air base because we were chasing after a helicopter signal, right? And helicopters, air base, seems to make sense to me. I just slap them together. But I have read some really crazy ideas for what chapter 11 could have in store for us in terms of location. Some people are like, it's a nuclear silo, and I was like, okay, that seems a little bit extreme. And some other people have read, like, there are just really cool ideas. Some of them are silly, but there are some really cool speculations and ideas where I'm like, yes, I could totally see how that would make sense. The back of a unicorn while fighting narwhals. Yes, it makes perfect sense. But either way, I'd love to hear what you all are thinking down in the comments below, because this is like one of the really fun parts that's really easy for everyone to participate in and guess. Even if you don't know a whole lot about the story, these emojis make it kind of a fun guessing game. But anyways, so location aside, let's move on to the other story beats that I think are going to be in store for us in chapter 11. Now, when we talk about story beats, I think that the best way to look at it is to think about the characters that might be involved. And I'm hoping that the following 3 characters have a pretty good showing in chapter 11 because I want answers from all of them. I really want the third one. And those would be Mr. P, TSP, and I really want Bunny to come back. I want Bunny to either come back or I want closure, darn it. I don't want to be left in the dark about this anymore. But although I don't want to see her infected, admittedly. So if we could skip that part, that'd be great. Just, bring her back to us safe. But anyways, let's talk about Mr. P first. So Mr. P, of course, is extremely important in this whole storyline. He's the one that originally, and there's a lot of this stuff that I'm going to be getting from notes, by the way. If you're like, that's weird, I don't remember that being in the cutscenes or whatever. Some of these pieces of information are in the notes and kind of scattered throughout the chapters, and they're all over the place, right? So keep your eyes peeled. For the ones that are really important, I'm going to go ahead and mention where they're from. But generally speaking, I'm going to find the notes. Mr. P's are kind of more towards the beginning and stuff, but I think most people know about them. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk about that. But anyway, so Mr. P is actually the one who funded the research for a cure. Now, who the cure is for, what specifically it's supposed to do, I don't think is ever stated. If I'm wrong about that, please do let me know, because I'd love to be corrected and learn a little bit more about that. But presumably it's a cure for Mrs. P, who I would assume is sick and needed some kind of cure. But whenever they developed this cure, it ended up being the potion, and the potion had side effects, namely the aggression, right? So what's changing all of these lovable characters into death machines and all this craziness. So we're trying to kind of figure out why the potion is doing that, but the potion itself had that side effect, and now Mr. P seems to be spreading the potion and getting a whole bunch of people infected. And it's really a question of, there's a lot of questions here, right? Number one, why? why do you keep doing this? If you knew, why do you keep doing it? And number two is what's going on with Mr. P? Why? He's always been one step ahead of us, right? We're trying to hunt him down. In the end of chapter 10, we do say we're gonna try to get Mr. P. We've been trying to really nail him down for a while here, but hopefully if we can. I would love to be wrong about this. I don't think we're gonna catch Mr. P, but if we could catch him, that'd be awesome. But in general, I really want answers about this. I actually have this really crazy theory, which I'm gonna talk about at the very end here because it links to Bunny. But yeah, I really hope that we get a little bit more information and clarity, not just about my conspiracy theory, but I also hope that we learn a little bit more about why Mr. P is operating the way he does. Because it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, right? You would think that if he knew that the cure didn't work, that he would just leave it alone. But anyways, so Mr. P, big question mark. Who knows? The next character, I don't know if it's correct to call TSP a character, but the next group, the next whatever they may be, TSP is, number one, we don't know what TSP stands for. In chapter 10, there is a note that says, don't trust and it looks like an SI. It's cut off, so it's not really clean. I'll have it hopefully up here in a moment. But the question is what it stands for. A lot of people, including myself, thought it stood for the search party, which apparently it doesn't really make as much sense if it isn't SI, right? So the question is kind of left up in the air. There have been some other ones like it's like the super Piggy or like the silly potato and all this other stuff, but no one's really super sure. I don't think a lot of those have a lot of credibility, but who knows? I could be wrong. But anyway, so we don't know what TSP stands for, but what we do know is that I think they're introduced in chapter 8 through notes. Now this is going to be somewhat important, so I'm going to break down the notes really quickly. We found 3 notes from TSP in chapter 8. One of them was at the very start of the level, where I think it's talking about like, this is, for those who are looking for a safe place, this isn't it, basically, like this is the worst place to look. So there was that note from TSP. We have another one in front of Foxy's cage where they say, do not open, monster inside. And then we also have another note. Now the third note here is probably the most important one. There's a note from TSP that says, Doggy and Foxy got what was coming to them. Now, I don't know why that is, and that's kind of the first signal we had that like TSP might not be the nicest. Like they might be kind of evil. So this note's really important because 2 things. Number 1, it implies that they knew Doggy and Foxy in some kind of deeper way. And number 2, it does seem to be the case that there's some kind of like sinister element, right? They're not just watching things unfold, be like, oh, it's really dangerous. They seem to be kind of in control and a little bit more okay with what's going on, which is supported by some of the stuff that we've found as well in chapter 10. But the next set of notes we find from TSP is from chapter 9. They start talking about they wanted to recruit more people. Now this is why I got a little bit confused about if is it a person or like is it one individual or is it a group? Because in the note they say like we need to start recruiting soon. I'll start with my closest friends. I seems to imply that this is one person's perspective, but then they also refer to themselves as we. So I don't know if it's like one person talking about we as a greater group sometimes, or if it's a group and then they just said I in this particular case. I don't know. But they talk about recruitment. They also talk about there's something at the hospital that they want. Now, this admittedly has like led to like a little voice in the back of my head. It's like, but Choco, wouldn't it be cool if they went back to the hospital and it was in ruins and they were gonna find whatever potion they need? There is a part of me that thinks that. I don't think it's gonna happen, but admittedly it'd be pretty cool. So I think maybe, hopefully, will be really awesome. I don't think it's in chapter 11, but it'd be really cool if we went to the hospital, it's in ruins, and we're trying to get to the evidence or whatever they need, whatever TSP is looking for, and we're racing TSP to that conclusion. That'd be really cool. But anyway, so there's also those notes right there. And then in chapter 10, we get the one note from TSP, an explicit note from TSP, which is going to be where they talk about they're taking advantage of the situation, and they thank Mr. P for the kind of like I don't think it's meant for Mr. P to find, but they thank Mr. P for the confusion that he's created and all this chaos and nonsense. And this is whenever you really kind of feel like, oh, okay, these guys are like up to no good, or like they're not exactly the nicest of people. There are some other notes. Some people think that they belong to TSP. The reason why I'm comfortable saying like these ones are from TSP is because they're signed by TSP. At the very end of TSP's notes so far, they have -TSP. The other notes, some of them are like, they seem like they could be from TSP, but they're not signed. So I'm going to go ahead and say that they're not from TSP. This does lead to another question, because there's one in chapter 10 where they talk about like, we need to gather supporters, which sounds very similar to what TSP said in chapter 9. So there's a little bit of like this weird, like, what the heck is happening? But we'll see what ends up happening with that. I am thinking that the only ones I'm going to say are for sure from TSP are the ones signed by TSP, but we'll leave that be for right now. So anyways, TSP, big question mark. All we know about them really is that there's like this mysterious, maybe evil, sinister force that's kind of like around and have been like becoming more apparent to us. So that's definitely one of the bigger questions that I would love to have a little more answers to. And the last character I want to talk about is Bunny. Oh, Bunny, sweet Bunny. So for those of you who don't know who Bunny is, Bunny we found in chapter 5, and Bunny was a character that had drank the potion from Mr. P and assumed that would lead to infection, so we left her behind, and she wanted to be left behind. It wasn't like we were just like, see you later, and just left, but she was like, okay, just leave me behind. Now this is something that has other people have been talking about this, and I'm kind of the same opinion for a lot of these folks. Some people have been saying that there was a note in chapter 10 where it says like, she broke out, she's somewhere, and the question is, who is she, right? Who is the person that we're talking about when they say she? A lot of people think it's Bunny. I think it's Bunny too. And okay, so this is gonna link into like a huge conspiracy theory, but basically my thought is, we left Bunny behind in chapter 5 because she had drank the potion. We never watched her go infected. We don't know for sure that she is infected, and we never really heard much about it. So we never got closure on the whole situation. My thought is that what happened is Mr. P is going around and he's trying to refine the cure, and he's still working on the cure, and that Bunny was given a version of the potion that doesn't infect you. And I'm really hoping that's the case, because we know, if we trust what Bunny said, Bunny did drink the potion. I'm hoping what we find out is that she ends up not being infected, and that Mr. P has a version now where the cure actually works for whatever he's been looking for a cure to. This to me seems like the most interesting thing. So I'm really hoping that we can, at the very least, I want to know what happened to Bunny. I want a closure. I want to know for sure, darn it, if Bunny is fine. But the really big one is also, I'm really hoping that this conspiracy theory is right, because that means a whole lot of crazy stuff, right? Number one, it would mean that Mr. P has been working on this formula. It wasn't just like, he was not just going crazy and just infecting everyone, but he's actually managed to make something that's really useful for whatever it is, and maybe he's going to join our side. But it also means that we get Bunny back. That's the most important thing, we get Bunny back. So anyways, hopefully that makes sense. I'd love to know what your comments are down below, some of your ideas, your theories, because I think it's really cool to talk about it and read about like all this crazy stuff that people come up with. But anyways, take care of yourselves, and I'll catch you next time.